Today we are launching a brand new series here at Top Shelf Hockey. We're doing an off-season review and recap for all NHL teams. We're breaking it down by division, where we're starting with the Atlantic Division. So we're going to look at what were the objectives of the off-season, who did they trade for, free agent signings, losses, what did they do at the draft, what do they have for unfinished business, and are they any better, worse, or about the same heading into the season? So starting with the Montreal Canadiens, and that's coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we're starting a brand new series here today. We're kicking things off with the Habs. We're going to take a look at an off-season review and recap series where basically I'm going to go through, analyze their moves as a team, give them a grade at the end of the video, and determine if I think they're a better team, or they're getting worse, or are they about the same heading into the next season, and is there anything left between now and training camp that we should expect from these teams heading into the season here. First up, what were the Habs' objectives heading into this offseason? Well, first and foremost, they want to protect their goaltending in the expansion draft. That was big. They want to be able to retain both goaltenders. They had a lot of free agent forwards, including some veteran guys that have been there a long time, some only a short time, but all important pieces. So they had to minimize their losses and try to replace some guys in that respect. And of course, as well, they had to try to replace Shea Weber after getting the bad news that he was not going to be coming back for this year, potentially ever. So that was a major devastating loss, and certainly new information that came out on him. So first up, Montreal Canadiens were able to get through the expansion draft relatively unscathed here. They lost Cale Fleury. They exposed Price. They didn't end up losing him, though, even though there was some nervousness right down to the wire. At the end of the day, Seattle did not bite on that contract and went with the young defenseman that they thought they could have a better future with. Now, of course, as far as trades go, they haven't been really active in that regard. All of their moves, the players leaving or coming in, have all been through free agency. So obviously they have a fair bit of guys that are not coming back, or at least looking that way so far. Most guys have already left that are not returning. So, for example, we know that Philip Deneau signed and left in Los Angeles, got a bigger contract than the Habs were offering. So the longtime top six center is no longer in the picture. Of course, a perennial Selke guy who's been in the Selke conversation at least for quite a long time was along with Gallagher and Tatar, was the part of their top line for a couple solid years there, and was really a big part of the team's success, and obviously he helped drive a lot of their playoff victory by being the shutdown guy looking after the other team's top offensive players. So that's a big hole, a big loss for Montreal. They also lose Thomas Tatar, who, like I said, had been part of Deneau's line. Didn't play a lot with them this year, especially in the playoffs, but you know what? They didn't even offer him a renewal contract. They didn't try to keep him. He's still unsigned out there. I don't imagine he comes back. But you know what? He kind of ran his course in Montreal. He had some good results, but they felt it was time to move on. They obviously lost as well veteran center iceman Eric Stahl, who came over at the NHL trade deadline, is not going to be coming back. He's still unsigned. He doesn't sign anywhere else either, but at this point, it certainly doesn't appear as though he's in their future plans. And of course, Corey Perry, who played a big role for Montreal as the season went along, especially in the playoffs, has departed to go sign with the team they lost against in the finals, the Tampa Bay Lightning. That's a huge loss. I mean, he was a leader, a character guy, not afraid to block a shot, throw a big hit, score some big goals. He was important for them, and now he leaves too. So those are some big losses for Montreal going into the season. And of course, on top of it, like I said, Shea Weber is possibly done for his whole career, and Carey Price had multiple injuries, one requiring surgery, and likely will at least be out for a little bit of the start of the season. They estimated his recovery. It sounds like he's going to be recovered right around the time the season starts, but he may miss a part of the training camp, so he may not be there at the very beginning, but he shouldn't be out for too long by the sounds of things as of right now. But we're going to have to see how his rehab goes as the offseason continues. But obviously, those are some mega losses. You take all that veteran leadership out of that room. Like everybody I talked about here are all big-time, older, veteran leader guys for this team. So that's a big setback for a team coming off the finals and some major turnover. Now, as far as what they've brought in, well, they've gone out shopping in free agency, and they've certainly added some decent players. I must say that the most of the signings that they brought in are relatively good, although I do think there's one area that they've yet to address. But for example, they signed Mike Hoffman to a pretty decent contract. I mean, they got him at $4.5 million. That, to me, he's your Thomas Tatar replacement. so he'll likely play top 6. But they have a lot of wingers as well. Jonathan Drouin could be coming back. He's going to training camp. If he stays with the Habs, you got Drouin, you got Hoffman, you got Anderson, Toffoli, you got Yoel Armia, who was re-signed as well. He was brought back on a new contract. He was UFA, but that's a good addition to bring back. He played a real solid bottom 6 role for them. Then, of course, on top of that as well, they signed Matthew Perreault on a 1-year deal. That should be a good fit on the third line, too. I imagine Armia and Perreault will probably play together. Of course, they would be familiar with each other from their time in Winnipeg as well. And of course, now they need a new center, which could be Cedric Paquette, who was also a free agent pickup for Montreal as well. Now, if they expect Paquette to play the role of Phil Deneau, they're sadly mistaken here, and that is going to be an issue for them. As I mentioned, to me, they're still thin down the middle. And of course, David Savard was their big pickup on the blue line, and even though he's not going to replace Shea Weber, I don't think you really can. He's going to take a lot of the minutes that Weber normally would have played. So he's going to be a big part of their top 4D on that right side. I don't know if they'll pair him with Sherratt like Weber did a lot, or if they'll switch him and Petrie around, and maybe he'll play with Edmondson. I'm not sure what the pairs are going to look like, but either way, he can play a top 4 role. He can play 20, 22 minutes, 23 minutes a night, play that right side. He's strong on both ends of the ice, can pitch in a little bit offensively, and to me, he was probably, out of all the options that were out there, one of the better options as well. So to me, that was a terrific signing. So I really like what they've brought in. I have no issues with any of the players they've either re-signed or signed. But at the same time here, when it comes to the Habs, like I said, to me, they're still thin down the middle. I'm not sure where things sit with Kotkaniemi, what he's really ready for moving forward. So if you have Suzuki, who's a solid 1C in my opinion, and then you have Kotkaniemi, who could be a 2 or a 3, then you got Paquette, who could be a 3 or a 4. You get Jake Evans in there, who could be a 3 or a 4 too. If you're, that's probably what they're looking at right now is Suzuki, Kotkaniemi, Paquette, and Evans. And to me, that's just a little bit too thin. Some of these guys, like Evans or Paquette, they can also play the wing if they need them to. So to me, they have all kinds of wing depth that we just talked about. Like, look at the wingers they have. It's pretty stacked. You might want to use one of those as a trade chip to maybe see if you can bring in another top 6 center. At least that for me, that's what I would do. But we'll see what Marc Bergevin has in store here. Now, of course, we had the NHL draft as well. We're going to be looking at what teams did at the draft. And Montreal certainly stirred the pot and created some controversy with their first pick of the draft, 31st overall, right near the end of the first round, which seemed to be dragging on forever to get to this point. But they've taken Logan Mailloux, the controversial star who got himself in legal trouble playing in Europe last season when the OHL was shut down. Obviously, that situation was 3 or 4 months old before it became more well-known to the public and to NHL teams, and many teams put him on their do not draft list, and the NHL is not happy with Montreal for selecting this player. Obviously, Gary Bettman himself in an interview on SiriusXM NHL Network really drove this point home, saying he was shocked and totally dumbfounded here and was really disappointed with the selection. And it sounds like the league is going to be watching this very closely. And I think that sounds like they've kind of asked Montreal to not consider signing him to his ELC for a while, to give him some time to play a year of junior, to try to rehab his image, to show that he's learned from his mistakes, and to show that he can be trusted again, to give him a chance to maybe show some more empathy to the victim, and just kind of let this play out a little bit. Because at the end of the day, he didn't even want to be drafted. He asked not to be, and they did it anyways, which I know is technically within their right, but still, where most teams wouldn't have taken him. They don't want a skilled player because of the problems that come with it. It's something that all teams, they should have all come to an agreement just to avoid, and let his wishes be honored, and so he could be drafted maybe next year after kind of reproving himself here. But they certainly stirred things up, and it kind of got a lot of people upset, and was probably really the only major stain on their offseason here. But still, it is what it is. I guess we'll see what the player becomes and how the situation develops. But there's a lot of unhappy people with the Habs. Now, as far as do they have any unfinished business, they certainly do. They have a couple of RFAs that need to be signed, including Kotkaniemi. So those are contracts they need to get done. I don't really see there being an issue. Lehkonen has arbitration rights. Kotkaniemi does not. So we'll see how those contracts go. But ultimately here, as far as other unfinished business go, I think most of their objectives have been met. Except, like I said, they're thin down the middle now. That Phil Deneau loss is going to be paramount for them. So I'll be curious to see if they want to make a trade by using some of their defensive or wing depth to try to upgrade that center spot. Because I just don't know. I personally don't have a lot of confidence that Kotkaniemi is ready for that solid number 2 spot. And if he proves that he isn't, that's going to be very problematic for Montreal. And, they're going to have a tough time. They're going back into an Atlantic division that features Tampa, that features Boston, Toronto, a really strong Florida Panther team, an upstart Ottawa Senator team that improved a lot last year, and in the second half was one of the top teams. So can they make a charge for playoffs? Maybe, not a guarantee, but I think it's fair to say that they're certainly greatly improved and will at least be in the conversation. And then you get Detroit, they're still likely going to be near the bottom, but they're improved too, in my opinion. And then the Buffalo Sabres, well, that's another story. But still, they're going to be in a really tough division. And even though they went to the finals, the changes to their roster between injuries as well as free agent losses are going to hurt. They're also going to be without Paul Byron for the first number of months for the season. He likely won't be available until around Christmas time or January because of hip surgery. That's another good loss. That's going to impact them, in a big way too. Obviously, his speed, special teams, penalty killing will be, a big loss. So we'll have to see. For me, did the Montreal Canadiens get better? Did they get worse? Are they about the same based on the team that we last saw play in the NHL season? And you know what? To me, I'm going to say they're about the same, teetering on getting worse. I don't really think they get better. There's no way we can say the Habs are a better team than they were last year, as of right now at least. I mean, there's some pieces that need to prove me wrong for that to happen, but they're kind of teetering to be about the same versus maybe taking a step back to me. So we'll see. But Marc Bergevin still has time. If he addresses that center depth before the start of the year in training camp, I think they'll be much better off. So let me know what your thoughts are on the Habs offseason so far. How would you grade Marc Bergevin? Do you see this team being better, worse, or about the same as we start getting ready to look more towards the 21-22 NHL season? Thank you for watching, and we'll catch you next time.